We're heading into week 5 of the NFL season, and only 2 unbeatens remain. Today, Amir is joining the show, and we have our week 5 predictions, power rankings, player of the weeks, all of it here on the channel. So if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Let's kick it off here with our power rankings. Amir, of course, you'll take over in a moment, but let's get into it here with my list. The Philadelphia Eagles, they lost last week, and I'm starting to worry about them. I don't think Nick Sirianni is an above-average head coach anymore. It doesn't seem like he has control of this locker room or this roster. And again, it seems like there's no trust or really good vibes around this organization. So they're at number 10. I think they can definitely get back up to the top echelon of teams. But as of right now, we have to see a lot, and they need to get healthy as well. At number 9, the Baltimore Ravens. And just like that, they're back. They started off the year rough, but back-to-back wins against quality opponents. They are back to being legitimate team, or a legitimate team. I think they have a big game this weekend on the road at Cincinnati. They need to take care of business there. At number 8, Tampa Bay. They rejoined the top 10 for me. They're heading on the road to Atlanta this weekend. And I think, hey, this is where the Baker MVP campaign can start. I believe in the defense. I believe in Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator. And, of course, Baker Mayfield has been playing amazing football. I like the Tampa Bay Bucks this year. They're starting to grow on me. At 6 and 7, we have NFC West rivals. Of course, at 7, we have Seattle. They go up despite a loss. And Amir, you're completely different on Seattle than I am, but they go up despite a loss. I think I saw a lot in that second half of the game. And again, they lost to me, to a top 2 team in the league. So that holds a lot of weight, right? So again, They kind of move up just because a lot of teams dropped out of the list, like the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example. At number 6, the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy continues to get it done. Amir, I said this is a stretch of time where I want to see Brock Purdy step up. He's doing that. And this team is only getting healthier going forward. They just got Debo back, and they should be better going forward. They just need McCaffrey back in the mix, and they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. At number 5, Amir, if you told me this before the season, I would have kicked you off the podcast and said you're delusional. The Minnesota Vikings, with no Kirk Cousins, are a top 5 team in the NFL, if not higher. They are one of the 2 only undefeated teams left in the league, and I think it's a big game this weekend. Sam Darnold revenge game against the Jets. How are they going to do? Excited to see. At 3 and 4, these teams have flip-flopped the last couple of weeks, but Buffalo lost, Houston won. They flipped spots, but they match up this weekend. Huge game for the both of them. I think it's a statement game for a multitude of reasons, but mainly the big storyline, Stephon Diggs, revenge game. Have to see how that works out. At 1 and 2, it's the same as my preseason power rankings. Kansas City, despite getting even more injured now with Rashee Rice with a torn ACL out for the year. How are they going to replace them? We'll talk about that later in the pod. Detroit, of course, big win against a very quality opponent in the Seattle Seahawks. They get a much needed bye this weekend. Amir, looks like your top 10 starts out the same way as mine.
Yeah, so at my test spot, I have the Eagles. And, this defense is very concerning. I mean, they're getting tore up in the secondary just like last year, if not worse. And, a lot of that has to do with them being young and them kind of build up that chemistry. But I think that's going to be their biggest downfall if they don't address it right now. And, with the injuries on top of that, I think, for that reason, I have to drop it down to 10. Honestly, some people even argue outside the top 10, but right at 10 for now. At my 9 spot and my 8 spot, I have Atlanta at 8, Tampa at 9. Tampa Bay for me, I still can't tell if they're fool's gold or if they're legit. I would say the offense looks great, for the most part, outside of that week versus Denver where they completely just got, locked up. But, defensively, they look better than last year, I'd say. They still have some icks every now and then, but they look better. Atlanta for me is a top 10 team because of the defense. The defense is lights out, amazing. Their secondary probably has been the best in the league so far. Kirk is honestly getting better week to week. And so with that, I have them at 8. After that, I have Buffalo at 7. I didn't want to bump them down, but, I mean, they got absolutely destroyed on both sides of the ball. I mean, Derrick Henry rushed for 200 yards. I mean, the offense looked solid, despite Josh Allen not having much time, on the offensive line. But it's like, Baltimore completely dominated the game from start to finish. At my 6th spot, I have Baltimore. I think I was sort of waiting for another big win by them. Honestly, Baltimore was a team for me where it was like, last week and the week before, even though they were outside the top 10, I knew it only took 1 or 2 wins to really put them back in the combo. Right. And I think seeing them on both sides of the ball hit that next step, finally get in the groove, I think they were thought out, a top 10 team.
Yeah, Roquan
At
is
my fifth spot,
amazing.
yeah, like great. Lamar looks great. Derrick Henry looks great. Isaiah Likely is hitting a huge step, and that's huge for that
Yes.
offense. At my fifth spot, I have San Fran. With the injuries, they're still a top 5 team in my opinion. And Brock Purdy, he's been playing amazing. I think he's leading the league in passing, second in completion percentage. He's playing lights out. Shout out to him. Shout out to Shanahan. At my fourth spot, I have the Houston Texans. This is the team where it's like, it seems like they're playing sloppy and they're still winning games.
Yeah.
This team has looked like they haven't even scratched the surface of the potential yet. This team is going to be a scary team throughout the year, a very scary team. The three spot, the Vikings, which is crazy. I have to say this,
I was wondering where they're at.
which is crazy. I have to say this, and I was waiting, but at this point, it's like, man, they're undefeated. Both sides of the ball, they look great. And, even though J Love was hurt, and, I show some grace towards J Love because he has an MCL injury, he's coming back early. But
Right. Right.
Minnesota on both sides of the ball look amazing. Sam Darnold is amazing. Kevin O'Connell, coach of the year candidate right now easily. And at 1 and 2, KC Detroit, both teams are great. I think KC Detroit are also knocking off some cobwebs. I do have some concerns for Detroit's pass defense, in particular. They have the pieces, but they just haven't, really been able to, control, passing offense, high power offenses, which they have to address right now. And KC, Mahomes is turning the ball over a lot, but they're still just that good. He's still that good. The defense is top 5 in the league, and I think that's honestly, going a long way for them right now.
Well, week 4 player of the week. I think you guys can pick it up by what Amir had to say earlier in the episode. Also, by all of the purple on your screen. Regardless, 24 carries, 200 yards, basically 8.5 yards a touch. Absolutely insane. A touchdown on the ground as well. He really carried the team on his back to a huge, dominant, much needed win, a statement win, as some would say. It's the King Derrick Henry, man. It doesn't. He is just like LeBron. He defeats Father Time seemingly every single year, especially for a guy that has so many carries and touches under his belt, even dating back to high school. The guy doesn't slow down, right? And I think we're now finally getting to see why they really went after him this offseason. And again, they're only going to get more comfortable together. Lamar and Derrick Henry, and of course, both of them in this offensive scheme. It's only going to get more dangerous going forward. Like we said, just like that, they're back to being for real team is what I'm getting at here. Any thoughts about Derrick Henry being the week 4 player of the week?
I thought, everybody was sort of, jumping the gun too quick saying all the Ravens, don't know how to use them yet. But it's like, come on now, like it's Derrick Henry. Like, for a fact he's going to have some big time games, games where, they can really rely on him. And I honestly showed it. And, I think at this case, in the season, once they get him going, once they kind of get Likely going even more and that pass attack going even more, we should honestly see, even more production for him.
Yeah,
But I would say, an honorable mention for me is Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff last night, I went ahead and I chose Derrick Henry early on, and I was like, somebody's going to need a huge game. But, hey, Goff played basically perfect that game, played lights out, took care of the football, which was huge for them last night.
let's go into the recap here, of course, from last week. And of course, we have our season record as well. The only game we disagreed on was the Baltimore and the Bills game. To clarify, Amir just brought it up. Last week, of course, we had a contingency bet. If Jordan Love played, I was going to take Green Bay, which Amir, you eventually joined me. But if he didn't play, I was going to take Seattle on Monday night and stick with Minnesota. Regardless, my record would have been the same. So 10-6 there, 9-7 for Amir. On the season, you see our records there at the bottom. The record, the gap is not far at all, right? That can I guess tighten in one given week. But let's get into it here, man. I saw this interesting stat, Amir, and I wanted to, of course, bring this to your attention as well as you guys watching the show. Depending on how you start the season, of course, you have a better chance to make the playoffs. If you start very good, of course, again, logically, you have a better chance to make the playoffs. If you start 4-0 in NFL history, you have an 84% chance to make the playoffs. Look at this graphic all the way down. If you start 1-3, you have a 14% chance to make the playoffs. Now, again, 1-3 can look ugly. It can look as ugly as the Carolina Panthers, or it could just be injury riddled like the LA Rams. And then 4-0, it comes in different, I guess, with different expectations. You have the Vikings shocking the world and the Chiefs handling business so far. But just an interesting graphic. Any thoughts about this before we go on?
This is definitely interesting. You brought up a great point how, it can look completely different. Like a 1-3 Rams team, I'm gonna be honest,
We had them
it does
making
not
the
seem
playoffs.
like right, exactly. For that Rams team, it doesn't seem like it's at 14%. I'm still not counting them out at all. And for the Vikings at 4, and I mean the Vikings aren't great, but we still can't fully gauge, who they are as a team just yet.
Right. Especially when we talk about contention tier, right? That's
Yeah.
what me and Amir are referencing here as far as actually competing for what everybody's after, and that is the Lombardi Trophy. But let's get into Thursday night. The 3-1 Tampa Bay Bucks head into Atlanta to take on the 2-2 Atlanta Falcons. Ironically, the Falcons are 0-2 at home this season. Will that continue? We'll have to wait and find out. But Baker Mayfield for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think if he wants to put his name in the hat of the MVP contention, this is a big game where he needs to win, and I think he needs to come out and dominate. Now, last year when he was a part of Tampa against the Atlanta Falcons, now the Falcons have added some pieces and different coaching staffs. Regardless, last year he was averaging just about 210 passing yards a game with just about 1 to 2 passing touchdowns against the Falcons defense last year. They head, of course, to Atlanta. Atlanta last week didn't have an offensive touchdown, Amir, but they still won the game. And what I've come to realize is that Kyle Pitts, as a Gators fan, is the most athletic and the most talented decoy in NFL history. This is a guy that last year had. No, I'll say this. This year we had hope for him because he had a different offense around him, different quarterback, different head coaching staff, and, we thought, hey, it might change, but he has all of this new stuff, and it's the same production that we saw the last couple of years. Kyle Pitts, I've come to realize, is just a big decoy, and I think he is safe to say, if he continues on this trend this year, he's going to be a bust considering where he was selected in the draft. But still a talented prospect, of course. But Atlanta, of course, offensively, you mentioned it earlier in the show. Kirk Cousins is starting to get better and better each week. The run game is still there, of course, but I want to see a little bit more in the passing department. Amir, your thoughts on this matchup Thursday night? I just want to throw it out there as well. I'm 100% from the field on Thursday night so far, but your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so this is honestly, a very underrated Thursday night football game. I think it's gonna be a great matchup.
Yes.
It's gonna be exciting to watch Baker and also, the Falcons. But, in this matchup, I'm leaning towards the Falcons. And the Bucks, in my opinion, are definitely a good team. But, seeing the way that offense, easily got hit in the mouth and easily collapsed, against the Broncos, I'm leaning towards, a defense that's, in my opinion, that's better. A better overall secondary, a team that has a great run defense. If they could find a way to kind of, limit that run game with Bucky Irvin, make it tough on him, I think that they could really make it tough on Baker overall, kind of mess up his rhythm. And, if Baker could definitely win this game, he's definitely in the MVP talks. But for me, Atlanta's defense puts him over the top.
Yeah, again, great. Again, when it's such a close matchup on paper
Yeah,
between two teams, typically you want to lean towards the home team. Now I do want to throw it out there, Amir. You're 3-1 on Thursday night picks this year. I'm keeping track of this year. I'll have to
that's
show you
crazy. I
after the
didn't know
show.
that.
I'm 4-0, right? So I'm 100% from the field on Thursday nights. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Bucks on the road. I think this is a big game for the Bucks team. The offense has been amazing so far this year. We just need the defensive secondary to just find some consistency there. And I think this is a good week to do it, because it's been a very inconsistent offense in Atlanta. I think this is a big game for Baker, right? Especially with, I guess his expectations for his team this year. I don't know. I just have a feeling. I think Tampa Bay has more to prove in this game. I think Atlanta, before the year, I had them winning the division. Right now, I think the favorite has to be Tampa Bay. I'm going to take them on the road here Thursday night. Is that going to cost my perfect record? Probably. But any last thoughts about this matchup here, Amir? I did have some stats I wanted to throw out there. Maybe I could sway your opinion here last minute. But I wanted to pull up some stats because I had some questions about just the Atlanta offense. Because ultimately, this is a team that is 29th in third down conversion rate. And of course, they are 4-10 as far as they've only scored 4 touchdowns of 10 attempts in the red zone. So, Amir, struggling red zone offense, struggling third down offense. Do you think that's just the Kirk Cousins, addition? Or do you think that's something that's going to continue throughout the season?
Honestly, I think the biggest, problem with this team is that, they haven't really found their guy just yet. They're really trying to, pull more out of Kyle Pitts, trying to rely on Drake London, but it's like in reality, I think, Kirk, obviously, he's still not, 100% healthy. He's getting better week by week, but I think this team is, honestly, just has really put all the pieces together. And seeing them for week one, versus Philly, where it was like they started off slow, ended the game hot. They go on. Last year, uh, playing against a team, in the Orioles who has a great defense. They also kind of started off slow. Look good sometimes and they're really bad sometimes. So I think for this team, playing against the Tampa Bay defense, whose secondary is completely up and down, I think this is a great week to really, piece those pieces together.
All right, just to clarify, Amir's sticking with Atlanta at home. I'm taking Tampa on the road. But let's go to London. Amir, of course, the New York Jets at 2-2. They've just been up and down all season. We'll talk about that in a moment. They go technically on the road to play the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, man, again, we've talked about it. One of the two undefeated teams left. They've had 4 straight weeks as the underdog in most sports books, and they have 4 wins. I mean, how much longer are we going to continue to doubt this team? Now, I will say this. Justin Jefferson, I had to do some digging because I said, I wondered, you have one of the league's best corners in Sauce Gardner, and of course, Justin Jefferson's probably widely known now as the best wide receiver in the league. Have these two guys ever matched up? In 2022, Sauce Gardner's rookie year, which I want to throw out there, Justin Jefferson in that matchup did find some success. Again, 7 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. He did have Kirk Cousins, right? So maybe a bit of a downgrade at the quarterback position, but who knows with how Sam Darnold has been playing this year. But the Jets, on the other hand, look, I mean, it's just been sloppy, right? I mean, one week you show us a lot of promise that you couldn't be the team that we thought you could be. And then you have a game like last week where you didn't score an offensive touchdown. You struggled the entire game. At one point, Amir, they were showing stats that these teams had like under 30 yards in the fourth quarter. I just think that this is a must-win game for the Jets more so than the Minnesota Vikings. And I think the Jets are going to come into this game with a lot more to prove and a lot more on their shoulder. Again, desperation is something that you can't really gauge in the NFL. But I think the Jets are a little bit more desperate for a win at this point than the Vikings. But your thoughts on this matchup, Amir, in London?
Yeah, this Jets team, I was trying to hold them, in being a top 10 team for the longest, but man, this offense has been completely inconsistent. And the defense is still great outside of that week when they get San Fran. I don't hold too much weight against them because I mean everybody gets, dominated by San Fran at a certain point. But you kind of see flashes to Aaron Rodgers, his accuracy still being there, but it's like, you also see times where it's like they go throughout the game and the offense is just completely dead. No explosiveness. They end up getting 3 and outs. A-Rod's getting pressured. And I think, that's honestly, the worst time to go, into a game. We're at a neutral field, you're playing against a team who has, arguably the best offense in the league up to this point right now and a great defense as well. And I think everything right now is leaning towards Minnesota for me.
Yeah, again, I will say this, Minnesota fans, I apologize in advance because I've picked against you every single week this season. And you've won every single week this year, so maybe I'm ruining it here, but I'm going to pick Minnesota as well. Again, Rodgers has had success against Brian Flores, whether if he was in Miami, right, or just throughout his career. Rodgers has had success against this exact defensive scheme. Of course, Rodgers has seen it all, but like you mentioned, just the inconsistencies all around with New York. I'm going to take the Kevin O'Connell, right, the offensive mastermind. Technically at home here with all the talented weapons that they have. I can expect Jefferson to have a similar stat line to this at the bottom, but this is a big game for Addison to show up. This is a big game for Aaron Jones or Ty Chandler to really help out this offense so they don't go as stagnant as they were in that second half of the game. But I can promise you this, whatever the under is in this game, I'm going to bet on it because I think it's going to be a very low-scoring defensive affair. I'm taking Minnesota, though. I'm taking Minnesota to get a win here. The 1-3 Panthers go to Chicago. Of course, these teams have some recent history as far as how Bryce Young ended up in Carolina and how Caleb Williams ended up in Chicago. But look, Andy Dalton has been solid the last 2 weeks. My question to you, Amir, when I turn it over, is Bryce done for the year with how good Andy Dalton has looked? And if he's done for the year, does that mean his time is done in Carolina? We'll come back to that. But Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette have looked really good in Adam Thielen's absence, and of course Andy Dalton taking over. They're on the road here, though. They play a very talented defense in the Chicago Bears, and I have a graphic here, Amir, about your boy Caleb Williams. Bear with me, again. Bear with me personally, again, for that title. I'm sorry I had to do that to you guys. But for Caleb Williams on throws that have been, on his personal throws this year that have went 10 plus yards down the field. He is 14 of 43. No touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 28 passer rating. That doesn't even look real.
Crazy.
This is a guy that is struggling to move the ball down the field and accurately down the field, getting to all these talented weapons that he has. Now, I will say, to go back to this, give him time, right? He's gotten better every single week, but you got to give him time, right? He's having, of course, some issues as a rookie, which is expected in the NFL. And the only other thing I'll mention, get DJ Moore the ball. But I'm taking the Bears here. Any last thoughts on this matchup about the Panthers, of course, or even Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. For Bryce Young, I've always been high on Bryce Young, but I think at this point, the relationship seems kind of broken between them.
It does.
Seeing Andy Dalton sort of be thrown in the mix and sort of giving this team and say, hey, go ahead, make something happen, and seeing them look great right away. I think at this point, they're sort of leaning towards Bryce Young being the problem, and so. In my opinion, I think Bryce is done. Unless Andy Dalton wants to go down and get hurt, I think Bryce is done in Carolina at this point. And so, with that being said, I'm leaning towards the Bears here. Caleb has looked sloppy. I won't lie about that part. Honestly, the entire offense has looked sloppy overall. I mean, the O-line has been horrendous throughout the year so far. Caleb has been struggling to really stretch the field out, with this arm and use that talent that we all know that he has. But, he's a rookie. He's young. I'm not going to jump the gun and call him a bust and say he's trash just yet. Because honestly, the play calling in itself has been super questionable,
Yes.
as well. And so, I'm taking the Bears here at home. I think the defense can get them over the top. The defense has been amazing this year, just like how it was last year, that second half of the season. And honestly, that's the reason why they have 2 wins so far.
On paper, should be another big game for DeAndre Swift after he had his best game as a Bear last week. Should be another good one for him. At least that's what the fantasy stats tell us. AFC North matchup here, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and we've talked about them a lot here already in the episode, so you guys already know the spiel. Only other thing I'll add, Lamar is 8-2 in his career against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'd say that's pretty good. They're on the road to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a team that just can't finish games, and their defense is absolutely terrible. It kind of flips the script that we've all known from this Lou Anarumo defense in the Joe Burrow era. Usually it's Joe Burrow just does enough and sometimes has just amazing performances, but the defense always shows up. That's been the song and dance since Joe Burrow's been there. That's not the case this year. That secondary is depleted. That front seven's doing all they can, but they can't stop a nosebleed as we've seen all season. So that is why I have to say Joe Burrow can only do so much, and I just don't think even that they have T. Higgins now fully back in the mix. Of course, you have Jamar Chase as well. The offenses can only do so much before the defense needs to step up. I'm taking the Ravens on the road here. They just look too good at the moment.
I'm gonna be honest. I really wanted to lean towards Cincy, because in my opinion, I think Cincy is a team that feeds off momentum, and that one win, sort of, kind of added hope, in their eyes. But, I'm still going to take Baltimore on the road here. I think Baltimore up to this point, the fact that they won 2 straight, the fact that Derrick Henry, is now in a groove. Lamar's now in a groove. The defense is honestly getting going. The fact that Cincy probably has the worst defense I've seen in the league so far. I mean, the defense is terrible. And, seeing them get completely carved up by Jaden Daniels, still lose the game, despite Mahomes turning the ball over a bunch. This team, honestly, is just too bad on defense. And, the offense looks amazing. Burrow looks amazing. I mean, Burrow been taking care of the football, dotting defenses up, but Baltimore just has too much from the lean towards Cincy. So I'm taking Baltimore on the road.
These are situations where you need your head coach to step up. And this is the exact reason why I think Zach Taylor's not been an amazing head coach. I think he's been fortunate to have the talent that he's had on his roster. And I think his true colors are going to show this season. This is where those great coaches need to step up and keep this team afloat until they can figure things out. He's not doing that. And I think this is probably the last year for Zach Taylor. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Not a big fan. Game of the week, no doubt. I think here for, of course, if you look at our rankings, Amir, you have them at 7. I have them at 4. I got them at 4, and you got the Texans at 3. Regardless, it's a top 10 matchup for the both of us. The Buffalo Bills, they had a wake-up call last week. I mean, throughout the first 3 weeks of the year, they were averaging 37 points a game. Then they only put up 10 against the Ravens in prime time. So, again, a bit of a wake-up call. I don't expect that's the version of the Buffalo Bills we're going to get the remainder of the season. But who knows? A win like that could kill confidence, or a loss like that could kill confidence, excuse me. But I think it's a big game. And if Josh Allen wants to get back on this MVP campaign and track that he was on to start the year, it's a big game for him against another very good team in the AFC. On the road, you need to win this one if you're Josh Allen. Now, for the Texans, again, you got back on track last week. It wasn't pretty against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you closed out the deal. And at the end of the day, Nico Collins leads the league in receiving yards. Stephon Diggs continues to, I guess, be utilized in a multitude of ways. Tank Dell has been hurt to start the year, but he's only going to get more involved in this offense. You got to find the flaws with I guess, both of these teams so far this year. But who are you taking in possibly the game of the year?
This is going to be a great game. I would say this Texas team honestly has no major flaws. The only flaw they have, is themselves. And the only reason why some of these games have been close, is due to themselves underperforming. And seeing Buffalo last game get hit in the mouth, I think Baltimore's a great team, so I'm not gonna, I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt. But seeing them, the effects of them, not having, Taron Johnson out there, and then Taylor Rapp possibly being out, you know, with a secondary that honestly, in itself doesn't have much depth. I'm taking Houston at home here. It's going to be a close game, a tough game. I want to lean towards, the Bills and Josh Allen because that's my favorite player, but I'm a realistic fan personally, so I'm taking Houston at home here.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm going to take the Bills. This is a game on paper where you look at it and you say the Bills shouldn't win. With the added injuries that you just mentioned, they shouldn't win this game. But I'm going to take the Bills. I think they figure it out. I think they get back on track. And Diggs, I think, maybe he gets a little bit too antsy on the sideline. Maybe he wants to be more involved just because, hey, it's my former team. I'm going to prove to them you should have never got rid of me. I don't know. There's a lot of things that you could point to. On paper, the Texans should win this game and probably by a score or two, but I'm going to take the Bills on the road. I think this is one of those where I think we're going to overlook maybe, or not overlook, but I guess underrate the road team in this case. But definitely understand the argument for both. So 2 games so far, Beer, we've disagreed on. This might be a third, again, depending on where you sit on this one. But the Colts at 2-2, they've lost the first two, won the last two. So they are back on track. And again, the city for the season so far, it's not been pretty, regardless, but they're finding a way to win with Shane Steichen, one of the most underrated coaches in the league. I will say Anthony Richardson, as a Gators fan, watching him in college, I knew my dad and I share this sentiment where we say he should have stayed a year. We understand he could have went first or, top 5 last year, which he ended up doing. But he needed to stay a year, fine tune his game, work on your accuracy. And again, I think going into last year's draft, he probably might be the first pick in the draft, or if not, pretty close to it. Regardless, if you're the Colts, you have a quarterback question, right? Anthony Richardson's dealing with a hip injury. How much is that going to play into this offense going into this week? Is that offense going to be a little bit stagnant? A lot of questions there in Indianapolis. They go to Jacksonville. They're 0-4, maybe the worst team in the league. Amir, where do we go from here if you're Jacksonville?
This team is 0-4, and me and both had them being trash this year, and I'll just wait.
Sorry, you're good. You're good. I just had to shut my door. But
Yeah,
pick up
yeah.
whenever you're
So
ready.
so I mean, this team is 0-4, but despite them being 0-4, I mean, you've seen them, be up in games. I mean, you've seen them, hold their own. But it's like, I think the biggest problem is, the way they collapsed last year. They didn't make any moves to really, make them better. And so I think, that collapse and that culture last year carried on into this year. And on both sides of the ball, they look completely just like, out of order, complete chaos. But surprisingly, I'm taking Jacksonville at home here.
Wow.
I think at this point, there's no way T-Law or this team, lets them go to 0-5, especially at home, against a divisional rival. And me personally, I'm not high on AR, even though he's probably not playing this week. I've been saying this for a while. I'm not that high on AR as a quarterback just yet. But Flacco's playing, so now I'm a bit worried for this team.
Really?
But I'm taking Jacksonville at home here to take this dub.
I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. And I shared that same thought, but I'm going to show you something here and maybe it sways your opinion. But just to clear it up, I'm taking Indy on the road, whether if it's Flacco or Anthony Richardson at the quarterback. But there ain't no sunshine there in Jacksonville. And of course, I think I'm getting better at these titles, Amir. But let's talk about it here. Of course, Of course, Trevor Lawrence has struggled. His last 8 starts dating back to last year. He's 0-8. He has 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 6 fumbles. So if you tally those up, 12 touchdowns, 13 turnovers, and an 82 quarterback rating, which is way below league average. You paid this guy like a superstar. He
Yeah.
hasn't been that. And again, that's why the questions are, where do we go from here? But I'm taking Indy on the road. I think their pass rush is going to bother this Jacksonville offense. But again, there's a lot of questions here, and how much longer until we start to point the blame on the coach that brought us to the playoffs 2 years ago, and Doug Peterson. They haven't really changed much, right? I guess philosophy wise over this Doug Peterson era. Does that sway your opinion at all, Amir? Here, seeing these Trevor Lawrence stats?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay, sticking with the underdog at home.
Yeah.
AFC East matchup here, we have Tyler Huntley, or is it Skylar Thompson, or is it Mike White? Tua Tagovailoa? I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, Amir. But for the Dolphins, how much of this is on Tua this year? Again, because when he was playing, he didn't necessarily look great. Again, you paid him like a superstar, and again, he has more injuries, but he went down yet again, and then this team is scrambling to find a legitimate quarterback. Again, injuries are a part of the game. They happen. I'm not going to blame Tua for getting hurt. But how much of this season are we going to start to blame on Tua when it's all said and done? Just something to think about. Now, Waddle was on the sideline mouthing, I'm going to talk to my agent. I need to get out of here. On the sideline, I don't know if you saw that clip. I saw it.
Well,
Does he
I
want
didn't see
out?
it.
Do you move Jalen Waddle? Regardless, something else to think about for Miami. Regardless, you see a lot of these things are worries about off the field issues, not on the field issues. But for Mike McDaniel, he is 3-1 against the Patriots in his career. For the Patriots, you're at home here, and I think you're playing as advertised, right? You won week 1, you've lost every game since, but you are a team that controls the clock, you protect the football, and you play good defense. Defense tries to keep you in these games as much as possible. My question to you for the Patriots in this game, if they lose this one, is it time for Drake May to take over after a 1-4 start?
I would say if they do lose this one against a Tua-less Dolphins and a team, in Miami who struggled the past weeks, I think at this point, yes. But at the same time, if I'm, the Patriots, I'm like, we don't expect much from this team this year as it is. So it's like, don't rush your franchise guy out there, don't just throw him in the fire. If anything, maybe see how the first half goes down, then throw him out there, kind of, let him just, still learn a bit. But
Yeah,
as far as who I'm taking this game, I'm taking the England at home here.
I agree.
Seeing Tony Pollard carve up this Miami defense last game, I think reminding serious stuff. I actually might rush for 200, on this team.
Moving over to the 1-3 Cleveland Browns, our hometown team. They're going to Washington to play the 3-1 Commanders. Amir, this has been a disappointing start to the year for the Cleveland Browns. They're 1-3. I think everything is just crumbling beneath our feet, right, from top down in this organization. There's just no leadership, right? And I think that when you could point all the fingers at Deshaun Watson and say he's missing different reads here and there, or he's holding onto the ball, or he's just not playing what we paid him to do. And yes, that's true. But he needs help, right? Our 2 tackles are gone. They're injured, right? And if they do come back, are they going to play more than a series? There's a lot of questions. Of course, this offense is putrid. It's terrible. It's hard to watch. The defense is doing all that they can, but even they are showing some flaws at stretches this season. I wonder about the leadership and the continuity inside this locker room. Regardless, it's a rough time to be a Browns fan, especially with all that money and all the talent that we have to not capitalizing on this talent that we have and winning at a high level. Again, it's a rough time. They're going to Washington. Jaden Daniels, of course, number 2 overall pick, is the runaway offensive rookie of the year. And this is the guy that is leading the NFL in some categories. In fantasy, he's the number 1 fantasy quarterback right now. The defense isn't great, by all means. The secondary, most notably for Washington, and maybe the Browns could take advantage of that. Maybe this is a game where Watson can get back on track as far as pushing the ball down the field. But that front 7 is amazing there in Washington. And if we saw a defense last week generate as much pressure as they did, imagine John Allen, Deron Payne. I'm missing some people here on that defensive line, but most notably those 2. Imagine what they can do, of course, compared to a defensive line last week that didn't have their best player in Max Crosby. Amir, your thoughts on this matchup? Who you taking, the Browns or the Commanders?
Yeah, you brought up a great point about, this Browns team. And, our offensive line has been, putrid so far. And, the play calling has been questionable. Deshaun, honestly, in my opinion, has been playing, pretty well. And so, I mean, he's doing everything he can do. He
Right.
definitely does hold the ball a bit sometimes, but I mean, he's doing everything he can. He's running for first downs. He's, improvising, extending plays, doing what he can. But I mean, it's not much, he could do if, Stefanski's only calling quick game or, the pass rush is getting back there in 2 seconds. And so, and the defense is well, I mean, the defense has been, solid, but the defense, isn't playing on the level it was last year to where it's like, the offense can completely play terrible and the defense can carry us through games. And so I think, you know, the matchup is leaning towards Washington for me. And so I think with that pass rush for Washington, Deshaun's going to have a very hard time to say how he did, the past 4 weeks. And so I think with that, also, Jaden Daniels has been playing lights out and great, taking care of the football. And, I think everything's leaning towards Washington in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to take Washington at home. I'm going to bet against the Browns until they prove me wrong. Let's move on here to, of course, the 4 o'clock window. The AFC West matchup here. Of course, the 2-2 Raiders go to Denver to take on the 2-2 Broncos. And for the Raiders, I mean, I guess it looks good right now. Devontae Adams should be back from his hamstring injury. Max Crosby should be back as well. And this team, of course, having their two best players back, ultimately, you would think, is only going to play better this upcoming week. I think last week, though, it was proved to us that Christian Wilkins was worth that huge contract that he got in the offseason. Now they go to Denver. Denver is a team that has a questionable offense, right? The defense is there, but last week, for example, Bo Nix only had 60 passing yards in totality, right? And all 60 of them went to Cortland Sutton. So outside of Cortland Sutton, who else is going to step up in this offense? Can Javonte continue to play at the level that he is? And outside of Javonte, can we get Jaleel McLaughlin to help out? Greg Dulcich, right? Some of these other options. Regardless, the offense and the offensive play calling needs to be better going forward. But I do want to say Bo Nix, I guess, even though his stats don't say, you can tell he is improving as far as his decision making on a weekly basis. But who are you taking in this matchup? Two questionable teams, but I think we're more so looking out for the Devontae and Patrick Surtain matchup than anything.
Now, I was definitely excited for that, but I'm seeing reports that saying that Devontae, might not even play this week because he faced his business decisions last week, and so if that doesn't happen, I'm taking Denver. Even if he does play, I'm still taking Denver. I think this Denver defense is playing great. This is how it was last year for the stretch of like 8 games they had, where they honestly looked like a legit team, and I think that's carried on this year. I mean, Surtain is pretty much anchoring that secondary. I mean, we have a quarterback that pretty much locked down one side of the field. I mean, it changes everything. And the pass rush has been really solid. You brought up a great point. The stat sheet isn't really doing Bo Nix justice. He isn't playing, amazing by any means, but he's getting better week to week, which is honestly what they've been waiting to see
Right.
from up to this point. And so I think it's going to be a close, low score matchup. Let's see how it's been for Denver the past, few weeks. A really close game. I'm thinking like a 10-7 game, like a 13-10 game, but I think
So no
Denver
one's
pulls it
watching.
out.
So no
Huh?
one's going to be watching the game.
Honestly, I'll probably be falling asleep in
Uh,
the first quarter watching this game.
That's surprising, though. I'm going to take Denver as well. I thought you would lean towards the Raiders. But I will say this in my fantasy video yesterday, I went into a bit of a deep dive. Devontae Adams, he's had the most success against Patrick Surtain, more so than any receiver across the league, and he's done it consistently. He's never had one of those games where he's completely shut down. It's always multiple catch, 100-yard games against a guy like Surtain. So maybe he can come back and do that again, but that's a tall task coming off of a hamstring injury against the best corner in the league in maybe the best home field advantage. Again, on the road in Mile High. It's not easy. NFC West matchup here. We're starting to see a lot of divisional matchups here as I continue to mention it. But for the Arizona Cardinals, we had a slimmer of hope for them coming into the year. At least I was a little bit higher on them than you. Because I knew this offense was special, I just had a question. Can the defense get enough stops for this offense to, maximize their potential? And no, they can't. They can't stop a singular run, let alone a game worth of runs. They have probably a bottom five defense. I'm doing them justice here saying bottom 10 defense. They're on the road against a team that's only getting healthier in the 49ers. They're a top six, top five team for the both of us. I'm taking the Niners here at home. I don't see any reason to go against them.
I mean, this Arizona defense can't stop a Cole if they wanted to. I mean, the defense has been getting torched. Last week, Jay and Daniels carved them apart, from, on the ground, in the air, everywhere. And so I think with the San Fran team, even if Debo, Kittle, Jordan Mason was out, I'm still taking San Fran at home here.
If I think this is a prime team for a guy like Ben Johnson next year, or a guy like
Yeah,
Brian Flores if he wants to get back to the head
definitely.
coaching field to take over Arizona. But like we mentioned, I'm taking San Fran there. Arizona, again, they're not in a great spot as far as their win-loss record this season. So let's develop our young talent. Interesting matchup here. Of course, you have the Green Bay Packers, which got their quarterback back last week in Jordan Love, and he just didn't look great coming off of that MCL injury. Now, I will say this for you, Amir. Of course, you might want to poke fun at this. They're 2-0 without Jordan Love. They're 0-2 with Jordan Love. So, of course, I'm
Crazy.
sure I'll see that all over the media outlets. But I think it's a must-win game for them on the road. Jordan Love now is probably going to be back to being comfortable playing on the field after taking a couple weeks off. And they have everything. I mean, the offense is there. Christian Watson might be out, but he's not really a big piece in this offense. The offensive line has been surprisingly good this year. And the defense, of course, has been above average. You're playing a Rams team that is just really injury riddled, right? And that's really the story of their season so far. Stafford and Kyron Williams are doing all they can, but it's just not enough. The defense eventually needs to do their job, and you need some of these younger wide receivers to, be consistent and step up consistently, just like a guy like Puka did last year. You're not getting that out of Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell, at least not as big of a degree as you were from Puka last year, if I could talk correctly. Now, I will say Cooper Kupp, maybe he returns this week, maybe not. I do want to say he's closer to returning to the field than Puka. I think at this point, you just got to try and grind out some of these wins, stay afloat until your stars come back. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to be enough at home here to take down the Packers. So I'm going to take Jordan Love here to get a big time win on the road.
Yeah, I think for the Rams, you brought up a great point. At this point, they have to just basically stall time for, for their guys to come back. And they have to try their best to try to, at least stretch out, win a couple more games until they come back. Hopefully be 500 by the time they come back. And, this game right here is just tough. Obviously, J Love didn't look great in that first half last week. But, I mean, second half, you kind of saw him, get clicking again, kind of get back to himself. Green Bay's defense has been completely inconsistent, but, I mean, the Rams have too many injuries here. So I'm taking Green Bay on the road here.
Green Bay on the road for the both of us. The Giants here, they have 10 days off, of course. So, again, I want to throw it out there. They're much more rested than a lot of the other teams in the league. They go into this matchup, and Daniel Jones does not have a great history against the Seattle Seahawks, Amir. That is not a typo, I promise you, Amir. But read those stats: 0 touchdowns,
That's
2 interceptions, and in 2 career games against them, he's been sacked 15 times. That is
crazy.
not a typo. The last time they played, he was sacked 10 times against the Seattle defense. But for Seattle, you're at home here. Again, you had a disappointing loss last week, but I think that second half showed a lot. You're still a really good team. You just lost to a better team at the end of the day. But Ken Walker came back with a vengeance last week. 3 touchdowns, looks better than ever. The only gripe I'll say about this team is that this season they have a problem with starting off fast, right? They often start slow and then they, pick it up in the second half. I want this team to start their games faster, right? Start more aggressive and get a little bit more points on the board early so you don't have to rely on your defense as much down the stretch of the season. But for the Seahawks, I'm taking them here at home.
I'm taking Seattle at home here too. I just think the defense is too overwhelming for this Giants offense. Despite if Malik Neighbors has a great game or not. Last week, I mean, I don't hold that game too much against Seattle because Detroit is the top 2 team in the league in my opinion. So, with that being said, I think that's a good wake up call for them. And this right here, is a really good confidence booster. You go from playing, at Detroit against a really tough team. You kind of get smacked in the mouth a little bit. Then you go back home and play against the Giants, who is a team that's completely underwhelming. And so I think for them to take Seattle easily at home here.
Who do you think wins that matchup? Tariq Woolen or Malik Neighbors?
Personally, um, really
It's
the
tough.
question.
Dude. I mean, obviously, Malik Neighbors is going to be moved around a lot. He's not going to solely be on
Yeah.
Tariq Woolen, but
Really, in my opinion, I would ask the question Witherspoon or Malik Neighbors.
oh,
Because Witherspoon, in my opinion,
that's who I meant to say. I meant to say Devon
yeah,
Witherspoon. Sorry.
yeah, because Witherspoon, in my opinion, is top 5 corner in the league, and
Oh,
so
wow. Wow.
yeah, Witherspoon is absolutely amazing, and so for me, I'm gonna lead towards. That's tough, man.
Obviously, we're talking strictly one-on-one matchups.
One-on-one matchup. Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. I hate to say that I think I'm going to agree on that. But who knows? Malik Neighbors, of course, big jump ball receiver, so he's always open technically on the field. Sunday Night Football, we have a historical matchup. These teams met in the Super Bowl a couple times, traded Super Bowls there in the 80s and 90s. But for the Dallas Cowboys, you come into this matchup at 2-2, 10 days off, again, just like the New York Giants, and this just feels like a must-win to me. Now, Mike McCarthy in his career with the Packers in the Super Bowl game, of course, years and years ago, in his time here in Dallas, he is 1-4 against Mike Tomlin throughout his career. Now, if you remember that one win, that actually came, of course, in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
When Aaron Rodgers got his first and only Super Bowl ring. But here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're at home. I think you got a big wake up call win or loss last week, excuse me. Um, I think it's a big game for Justin Fields this week. You know, there's Russell Wilson's probably going to be cleared going into this matchup, and he was given the starting position before the season. But Justin Fields, over the last 2 weeks, has accounted for over 600 yards and like 5 or 6 touchdowns by himself, right? Of course, 3 on the ground, 3 through the air. He's been killing it. So is it his job going forward? I think so. But I just think that this is a question that this team's going to have to battle all year long. I think however, though, I will say this. I think if Justin Fields can win this game, I think that's going to prolong the questions of who's going to be the quarterback. I think Justin Fields is a big game for him, more so than any other individual player. But your thoughts on this matchup? Can Pittsburgh get back on the right track, or does Dallas continue to stumble?
This is definitely a huge game for Justin Fields. Specifically for that offense in general. And defensively, they've been great, the best in the league, in my opinion, and the stats, back it up.
Yeah, by
But
far
I
number one
think,
defense.
right, but I think at this point, this is more of a must-win game for Dallas. The fact that they have 10 games off or 10 days off, I think that they handle business on the road here. The biggest reason why is, despite Fields playing well, taking care of the football, doing what he has to win these games, it's just like, I mean, this Pittsburgh offense doesn't move me. It's no explosive plays really.
It
It's
is an
mostly
Arthur
game
Smith
management,
led offense.
right? And so it's like now at this point it's like, I think Dallas defense will easily be able to, pretty much prevent Pittsburgh from really, producing anything. And so I'm leaning towards Dallas.
Yeah, I know Micah Parsons is coming into this game a little bit banged up, but this is the part of the season where everybody's going to start to be banged up for the remainder of the season outside of the quarterback position. But I'm taking Dallas on the road here as well. I think, again, it feels like a must win for them. Mike McCarthy feels like a must win for him personally, as far as maybe does he keep his job after the season? I don't know. He needs to start getting some of these big time wins. I know Dak struggles in prime time. Mike Tomlin thrives in prime time. So all the signs point to Pittsburgh winning this game, but I'm going to agree. I'm going to take Dallas on the road here. I think Dak needs to show why he was worth all the money that he got, and same thing can be said with CeeDee Lamb. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if Pittsburgh just wins this game like 17-10. Monday Night Football to close out the week here. We have a 2-2 New Orleans Saints team. They started off the year hot, 2 wins, then they had 2 losses. Who is this team actually? Like, what can we expect from this team going forward? I think this is a huge game on the road here to answer that question. You're playing a now injured Kansas City Chiefs team, even more so. You already lost Isaiah Pacheco. Now you lose Rashee Rice. He's out for the year with an ACL injury. So, again, speedy recovery for Rashee Rice. Hopefully he can come back by the start of next season. Now, again, I have this little saying here, death, taxes, and Chiefs win again. They're one of the 2 undefeated teams left in the league, the only team in the AFC, and they're home here. Now, again, they're undefeated at home to start the year, obviously, and I think they're going to take care of business here. I don't believe in Dennis Allen. I don't believe in this offense there in New Orleans. The defense has always been solid, but again, the offense lacks, and Chris Olave is also dealing with a hamstring injury. I'm taking Kansas City here despite everything going against them.
I'm taking Kansas City too, despite, Rashee Rice going down. This team without a doubt is the best team in football. And, we have Mahomes, a guy that knows how to win, and what the defense has played, even better than last year, which is crazy. I think without a doubt they take control of this game here at home. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if we see in the next coming weeks, with Rashee Rice being out, they pursue a guy in free agency, Hunter Renfrow. They trade for Devontae Adams, which I know the Raiders wouldn't make that trade. But I mean, shoot, a guy like DJ Moore who's having problems in Chicago, you never know.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I want to talk about it. Who is going to be the Rice or the right replacement? See what I did there? Anyway, I think there's some guys on the left side of your screen here that they could trade for. Guys like Noah Brown, who I think is going under the radar as far as the general media. He was very solid in Houston last year for CJ Stroud, and now he's in Washington, not getting much burn at all. I think he could be a very cheap. I'm talking a 6th or 7th round pick. You bring in a guy that last year was a wide receiver one on the team that made the divisional round of the playoffs, or excuse me, he had a wide receiver one workload. Let's say that, right? The Texans offense had 3 legitimate wide receiver ones last year, at least as far as how they were producing. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is the big name. The Chiefs have been after him for years, it seems like, and they could just never get the job done, whether if it's a trade or a contract. Regardless, he's in Tennessee and he's struggling. Last year of his deal, does Tennessee move off of him? Right? There's not much of a cap hit if Tennessee does decide to move off of DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I will say, out of all three of these guys, or out of any option around the league outside of Devontae Adams, I think this is going to be the most expensive get is DeAndre Hopkins, but who knows? The Chiefs seem to get away with a lot of things, so maybe they can get him for like a 3rd round pick. And then for Michael Thomas, he's a free agent. He's sitting at home. This costs you absolutely nothing. A guy like you mentioned, Hunter Renfrow at home, costs you nothing. Bring in these guys that are proven veterans, great route runners, and they have sure hands, which is something that the Chiefs have struggled with, having consistent pass catchers in the Mahomes era. So your thoughts, out of these three, or is it Renfrow? What is the one guy that you think, or I guess hope, that the Chiefs go after? Or I'll say this, if you're Andy Reid, who do you want?
Well, if I'm Andy Reid, a guy that I would go after, a guy who works on the slot, who's a great route runner, is Hunter Renfrow. Before Josh McDaniels, got the Raiders. I mean, he easily 1,000 yards receiving, and I think personally, if I'm Andy Reid, looking at Renfrow, I mean, he's still 28, so he's still technically arguably in his physical prime, as a player, I lean towards him because I mean you can easily sound like a 1 year, cheap contract. The problem with DeAndre Hopkins is, I mean, you trade for him, the cap hit, all that stuff
Comes
that,
with
that comes
baggage.
with it. So, right. And so at this point, sign Renfro, contact him ASAP, basically start time for Hollywood Brown to come back for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Michael Thomas was going to be the guy that they go after, he would have already been on the roster.
Yeah.
I think they would have gotten him before the Juju Smith, before they brought back Juju Smith to the roster. But he just, Hunter Renfrow, like you mentioned, he's somehow not on a roster, and I think he just fits. He's the typical Andy Reid wide receiver. Again, every once in a while you'll have the McCole Hardman and Xavier Worthy, Tyreek Hills of the world. But throughout his career, even back when he was with Philly, he had a lot of these short, great route running wide receivers. So again, it fits the mold of what Andy Reid likes to do. That's why they brought Juju back, was for his route running. But regardless, they need to find a Rice replacement. Here's a quick recap of our picks. We disagreed on 3 different games this week. Tampa Bay and Atlanta Thursday Night Football tonight. Of course, the Buffalo Houston and the Indy Jacksonville matchups there. Now, again, we have 4 teams on bye. We have the Eagles, the Lions, the Chargers, and the Titans. So you fans, you got a week off. But here we go again. We have this is the 4 o'clock and the late game window there. That is episode 214, Amir. Next week, I have something interesting, and I think kind of how we wrapped up the show there, talking about trade candidates or potential free agents. We might want to do something with that next week, of course, as teams are starting to get a little bit more desperate. Any last thoughts before we get out of here, though, Amir?
Not really, man. It's a great episode. Once again, I'll be back next week for sure.
Absolutely, and hopefully I can win all 3 of those games we disagreed on, so the gap gets even larger. We'll see you guys next week. Go enjoy some football.